When I love a fabric, I not only put it into a quilt, but I put it into a garment too. The name of my patriotic quilt is called Seeing Stars. If you stretch the mind, you can find Miss Liberty in my 5-pointed star. And when I quilted her face, I decided to have 2 5-pointed stars as eyes. The title of our show is Red, White, and Blue. The waving of Old Glory, our American eagle, red, white, and blue fabric, the renovation of the Statue of Liberty, all good reasons to conduct a quilt contest. And that's just what the Museum of American Folk Art and 3M Scotchgard Products did in New York City. We had a chance to view the wonderful array of quilts. These were selected from across this country from a panel of judges on a regional basis. I know you'll enjoy seeing these quilts. If nothing else, I think this show proves that you can venture out and that you don't need to stay with a set pattern all the time, that you can do original work.
Well, you know, I think the most interesting thing that I did for me on this is I drew the design, but I did not follow it. I took fabric and the purple pen, and I stayed away from tracing the design onto the fabric. I freehanded onto the fabric.
How exciting!
And it gave it a lot of fluidness.
Marilyn, your quilt reminds me of the Baltimore album quilts. Were you inspired by that idea?
I absolutely was. I thought that the album quilt was the quilt that you could tell the most with, like a storytelling quilt. And
Applique will do that.
Yes.
And you've called yours America in Applique?
Right.
And there's a different story in each panel. Do you have a favorite?
Gosh, people ask me that, and I'll say one week I'll say one block, and the next week another. I like the immigrant block, and I think the horse is kind of stylized, and that's kind of fun.
That way you don't show any partiality.
I don't.
That's nice.
I don't.
And the border is so pleasing that just ties the whole quilt together.
That was a wonderful, happy accident.
Oh, it was.
It was.
Very good.
Because I thought I wanted to show my sister, so I drug the quilt off to her house, and I said, okay, now here I'm going to spread it out all over the floor, and I'm going to show you. Now here on the border, I'm going to put flowers and da-da-da-da. And then I didn't have any of the fabric with me to show her where the flowers was, and she dug into her fabric stash and dug out that broderie purse, the chintz, and I cut her fabric up and used it.
That's wonderful.
I thought it brought the whole quilt to life.
I suppose she wants partial credit for the quilt.
She does, but I'm not giving it to her.
I don't blame you one bit. Your quilt, I have to admit, is one of my favorites.
Oh, thank you.
But it does have a new perspective. How did you come about doing this? Now, we've all had new angles, but yours takes the cake here. Tell us about it.
I'm glad to explain it because it isn't obvious, I don't think. I'm real familiar with Michael James's quilt, Bedloe Island, and he just has the 9-patch in that one, and I thought, oh, that's a good idea, but maybe I should look and see more of what goes on at the Statue of Liberty. So I started looking at the statue itself and the island, and I saw the star-shaped fort, which looked like a medallion quilt, a very traditional, except that it's not even. There's only one point on the one side, and that made it very identifiable.
Oh, I'm glad you pointed that out because I did not see that at all. And now tell us about the beacon and the rays. That is so effective.
The 2 light sources, and I didn't know at first I wasn't going to try them, and then my family encouraged me and said, oh yes, you can make that work. So it was just a matter of having the light which comes out of the crown and the old torch, and then trying to balance it out. And the way I did it was with dyed fabrics.
Charlotte Barr Anderson is the second place winner. Congratulations, Charlotte. It's lovely.
Thank you.
Tell us about the historical aspect that you put in your quilt.
Well, I spent months thinking about it. I wanted to cover all the bases on the theme. It was a wonderful theme to work with. And I had come up with another idea, and it wasn't working right after I had completed my Statue of Liberty. It just didn't seem to go with it. So I changed and came up with this idea. And what I wanted to do was cover, kind of go across the nation, and then around to the other side of the world, and then out into space, cover the way America's moving.
Monica, we are so privileged to see your quilt behind you and have a chance to talk with you a minute as the overall winner of the Expressions of Liberty. Tell us about your original inspiration and why you took on this project.
Originally, my inspiration probably came from the fact that I did visit the Statue of Liberty 3 years ago, and had I not seen her, I don't think I could have put the strength into the piece that I feel, and I hope other people feel as well. I'm a new quilter, if you consider 4 years new.
As a beginning quilter, though, you stand as inspiration for people to break away and see if they can't venture out and do something as breathtaking as your piece, and that's good to know.
Well, I always hope to be inspirational to people, and I've been teaching for the last year, which is wonderful. I learned so much from every class I teach. I hope they get as much out of it as I do.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do, and I know how proud they must feel of you. I know they must feel.
Oh, thank you.
Not all patriotic quilts made it into that contest in New York City because they weren't winners, and also not all of them were finished in time. I'd like to present to you Glenda Gussman's quilt entitled My Star-Spangled Banner, and truly it is a wonderful patriotic quilt. She made this to hang in her family room, and of course she's got to redecorate. It was lap quilted in the 4 sectional stars, and it is based on the log cabin motif. Notice that it contrasts with the star fabric on one side and the solid reds strips on the other side. I like the way she's quilted those stars with personality in that red area. And like any good quilter, Glenda based her whole design on paper initially. The setup was drawn, she had her colors sketched out, and because it was all the full size, she could simply transfer the freezer paper right off on this, not only for the flag, but oh, look at that awesome torch. Look at the templates there. But she did it row by row, and it was very exciting. Where do you start when you decide to do a contest? In the case of Seeing Stars, I was truly inspired by the fabric itself. It spoke to me of patriotism. I felt it was a fabric that would last for a long time. But then, at some point, you have to go to the paper. Let's go to the paper and see exactly where we go from there. So I'm going to kick my shoes off and sit down on this piece of paper and show you exactly how I drafted this quilt. I had my fabric. I also had the restriction of a 72-inch square. And I think that in those instances, when you know exactly the area or the space that you're going to fill in with design, it is smart to simply scotch tape some panels of unprinted newsprint together, and then you know that it's this area you've got to fill up. Actually, I put this on the living room floor for about 2 weeks and sat in the middle of this paper for a while thinking maybe a vision or an inspiration would come. It didn't work that way. I had to do a little bit more work than that. I started going through all the advertisements and the promotional material for the contest. I went to the library and did some research, and then I realized that I had never actually drafted a 5-pointed star, and that seemed very patriotic to me. So I found the midpoint of my piece of paper by folding it, of course, and you could measure it also. And then I got my protractor, and by positioning this in the center, I simply went ahead and drafted my 72 inches. 5, as we all know, into 360 degrees is going to give me 72 inches for my 5-pointed star. Once that was done, I had to decide how far were the points of my stars going out. Now, I don't know if you ever think this way, but sometimes with a 5-pointed star, I kind of think of this is the head, and these the arms, and these are the feet. Well, I took a little artistic leeway and made my star a little bit wider here. So if you notice, I have come wider here so that this line does not come all the way straight across. This was the area that I had to fill up. And I started by designing that image of the head in the center part, knowing that the points on her head would be coming out into the center. Of course, once that was designed, I knew this section was repeated 4 more times. I could then make my templates and start from there. And of course, I had all sizes of templates with my 1/4 inch added to it. Well, I have to admit, this was the center of my quilt, and this represents about 1.5 days of work. It was very hard for me to reckon as a teacher and as a quilter for 16 years that I had done it all wrong. And it's called live and learn, and sometimes just 1.5 days out of your patchwork life will show you that I had tried to put too many seams into the center of a quilt. I think I've got 10 pounds of material in the back there. Well, I even had to go in there and do a little bit of hand piecing. It just didn't work, and the more I studied this, I realized that if I eliminated these seams all the way around, all of a sudden I could make this center section work for me. And the answer, right again, was freezer paper. So I took these 2 pieces, put them on my light box situation, got my freezer paper, and made that 1 piece that went right here, eliminating 5 seams in the center. And all of a sudden, by adding the 1/4 inch, I knew exactly where to sew, especially down in that very strategic spot right there. So my center star was done, of course, once I added my portion here and then the points. I did have some throwaways in that at one point I was having a muslin point, and I realized that if muslin went next to that, you wouldn't see the point of my star, so I had to reverse colors here. These are a lesson in what I did wrong. From there, I had to go on and set my star in a situation, and I decided to put it into a circle. I wanted to give you a tip here about these wonderful yardstick beam compasses. There's a point on one end that can be secured, and then from the center, you simply go out, and that's a pencil mark there that becomes a nice line that will give me that line all the way around. And then it was this portion that sat right here, and that was going to be the muslin, and that was going to have the quilting in it. I then wanted a portion from here to feature my print. Borders, I think, frankly, are what make this quilt. And I had fun drafting those. I did all different kinds of sizes, and I colored them in. These were all rejects and things that I didn't use. And then I finally settled on this motif. Sometimes I think when you finish a project such as this quilt, you can almost stand back and evaluate it yourself. And I really feel that, that perhaps the border on this quilt overpowers the center of the quilt. But then when you stop and realize that you never build the perfect house and you never really make the most perfect quilt, I think this becomes a lesson in understanding how you approach fabric and how the finished product looks. This quilt has special meaning to me also because it's the quilt that ended up going to the hospital with me because I had to get it done. So every once in a while we can touch and turn to our fabric to get us through some trying times. I liked working on paper like this because it got me away from the block situation and made you think about the overall area that needed to be filled and covered. But now quilts were not the only thing that were featured at the Liberty Contest. We had a chance to view some wonderful Liberty garments also. My garment is entitled Harbor Light, and that's exactly what the Statue of Liberty is. I was at a complete loss what to create for this Wearable Art Fashion Show that was sponsored by Fairfield Processing Corporation. Then one night I saw the beacon lifted on to the arm of Miss Liberty. All of a sudden I thought vertical flexicurving. Up until then, all of my flexing had been horizontal, sky and land. Now I had a new opportunity to change those lines. We invite you to a sneak preview of the Wearable Art Fashion Show featuring Donna Wilder. Donna, it's so good to see you again, and know that you have more garments for us. We have enjoyed the combination of fabric and batting that the designers across the country, the quilters, have turned out. But this time there's a different theme. Tell us about what's happened here.
Well, this was a show that was created specifically for the Great American Quilt Festival that took place in New York. And we asked our designers for the first time to take a theme, and it was liberty, freedom, and the American heritage in celebration of the Statue of Liberty centennial. So all the designers used that as their main goal and then came up with different ideas in their garments. This is the first one that I wanted to show you today because this one I think is really special. She calls this Pledge Allegiance to the 9 patch.
I've never seen the 9 patch look better.
That's
wonderful.
right. But do you know she used ribbon on this? This is 1/2-inch ribbon that's been stripped together into blocks. You can actually see the shape of the block here, then re-sewn all by machine back together. Notice that's all the zigzagging there. Isn't that fabulous?
Wonderful satin
And look
stitch.
at this. The accordion pleating in between, just wonderful. To top this one off, she even made a little hat. Now this is really just the crowning touch to that wonderful outfit.
It does the job.
Isn't
it
that
does
great?
the job.
In addition to the red, white, and blue, one of the themes that we found reappearing was taking something from the Statue of Liberty and interpreting it in contemporary clothing or in almost a historical style garment. This dress was designed by Jinny Beyer, and I feel that this really has that historical look to it, but it's using the crown.
I can see it. I
Isn't
can
that
see it.
wonderful?
And I can feel I could wear this today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been quilted with cotton classic batting through the sleeves and then up again at the neckline. And this is that wonderful lattice work that appears underneath the points of the crown where the light shines and illuminates through. And she's really captured that in the use of the colors together.
And it has an old-fashioned
Yes,
flair to it, yes.
Now, of course, the next garment you'll recognize,
Oh,
it's
gosh.
Georgia Bonesteel.
Many hours at the machine on this one.
This one's called Harbor Lights, and again, using the torch or something from the Statue of Liberty as the inspiration for the garment. I love what has happened here in your garment, Georgia, with the beautiful machine stitching. It really looks like hand quilting.
Right. Someone said, oh, you did that all by hand. I said, my goodness, no, that's all in the machine. But it creates that depth and that third dimension that you want. And of course the batting, it's that sandwich in between that does it.
This is the low loft batting, which is a lightweight, low batting, bonded. And it's wonderful because it gives you the relief, but it doesn't give you that added bulk that we all don't need in our garments.
Yes, and it will be warm.
That's
guaranteed.
Right. Now, the other area that some of the designers took was our heritage, where we came from, and this garment was designed by Elinor Peace Bailey from California. All along the hem, you'll see the nationalities from across the world who have immigrated into the United States. The little Cupid dolls that are dressed in native costume on the front, and the back is absolutely magnificent. This large tabard continues down with machine applique faces of people from different nationalities.
Oh, the complexions all change. It's just,
isn't it wonderful?
It's beautiful.
And of course, Elinor couldn't forget the quilters. Notice the little quilting bee that's taking place down there.
So glad, right.
Isn't that wonderful? Then again, going into the red, white, and blue theme, this was done by Marty Sandell. Marty's from California, and she calls this one My Legacy. Marty's family began in Massachusetts in the 1600s and has moved as she has gone to California and lives there presently. Notice the ocean wave pattern along the bottom edge. She indicates that that shows the travel from the Atlantic to the Pacific.
Right. And the British flag on the lapel.
It's wonderful. And this is an old fabric and a new fabric. So combining East Coast, West Coast with old and new. And little vignettes appearing throughout the garment. And of course the tribute to the Statue of Liberty that has been, this is stenciled on and then machine appliqued to the garment.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Now, all the time when I do the show, a lot of people ask me about the clothes that I wear. And I thought it would be interesting to show you the skirt that I'm going to wear in the show. And this is quite interesting, George. This is what we call our Venetian blind skirt. Notice how lovely it is in the navy. And if you'll grab that little tab right there and pull, we'll show everybody that as the Venetian blinds turn, it changes from a navy blue pleated skirt to a red pleated skirt.
with the stars integrated in the border all the way around.
Isn't
How
that
wonderful. It's a level skirt. I would never have thought of that one.
That's right. This was designed by Cecily Zerriga, and she made it for me to wear in the fashion show, and I've just really enjoyed having it. The next garment is also one that has kind of a vintage clothing look to it. This was designed by Jean Wells. Jean is from Sisters, Oregon, and Jean is known for her embellishment. And she has worked with laces and ribbons and old buttons and kind of twisted and entwined them all together in this beautiful, beautiful jacket. Let's show the back of that because, you know, this is what Jean does so well.
Such a ladylike appeal to it.
And yet it has that kind of Victorian look in the styling. We call this one crème de la crème, and I just think it looks like that. Isn't that lovely?
For a very special occasion, which this is.
That's exactly right. Now, our next two garments are very interesting. And you would have thought our two designers worked together to create this scene. This one that I'm holding was designed by Leslie Claire Greenberg from Fairfax, Virginia, and the one you're holding was designed by Yvonne Porcella from Modesto, California. Two sides of the United States, two different looks, and yet the same fabrics reappeared in quite different styles.
Oh, and I love, look at Yvonne's
She painted
her silk fabric. Her
the
finishing is just remarkable.
And this one has a wonderful cape on it that kind of just stands out. Isn't that fabulous with the
star-spangled look?
That's exactly right. This
Red,
kind of comes
white,
off
and
the
blue.
shoulder. Now, one of the designers that I've had in the show for many years is Virginia Avery. And I know you enjoy looking at her novelty in the work that she does.
There's so much of a story here. You can just go on and on.
It's really a tribute to America. And she has written little sayings all throughout.
And it is a cape, not a skirt.
It's a cape. It's a cape, and it's worn over a gold lame jumpsuit.
Too much.
Really wild.
Too much.
But look at the firecrackers, the little lucite stars. Memorabilia from look at Nixon down here, and Kennedy's at another place, George Washington, a lot of elections, and I love the Statue of Liberty with those blue eyes
Only
there.
Virginia could do this. I love it.
Isn't
Banners.
that marvelous? And she's added buttons and trims and little prairie points along the bottom. It's just a fun
even
garment.
look inside. I hadn't seen
her
this. Look at the fans.
Are carried out throughout the bottom there. Probably one of the most popular quilting patterns around.
Yes, yes. Very
so that's
traditional.
her tribute to the Statue of Liberty. Now, our next garment is one that I know you particularly like.
Oh,
and
it is my favorite.
It's one of my favorites. Judy Montano is from Colorado, and she felt that we could not pay homage to the Statue of Liberty without looking at the first American. And of course, that's the American Indian. She worked in facile, which is a ultra suede type fabric. It's the lighter weight version. And she made an Indian costume, beautifully trimmed and decorated. Notice the fringe, all these little tin things that are crimped on.
Such
They have
movement. It just moves.
Isn't that wonderful with the feathers? Now, this has almost a Victorian or crazy quilt look to it, although it's all hand appliqued on here and then embellished with some decorative stitches and some beads. Now, let's turn it over and show them that that's the Indian, and there's the symbol of the eagle.
The American eagle.
Isn't that wonderful?
And you get the impact of these wings just flowing across this
over
as a
the
cape.
you know the purple mountains,
Yes,
majesty, and the
yes,
plains.
yes,
I mean,
yes.
it's just magnificent.
I want to wear it. I want to wear it.
Well, you probably look just wonderful in it. The last garment that we're going to show, I think, is probably. My assistant said it looks like Evel Knievel might wear this one, you know, on his big motorcycle.
A finale. Oh.
This is really the glitz of the patriotic red, white, and blue. And this one, look inside, look at the fringe.
I don't believe it.
This was designed by Louella Daws. Now, these are the stretch sequin pants that go along with it, and there are 25 stars up the legs and sleeve of one arm, and 25 stars up the legs and sleeve of the other arm. Very patriotic from the inside out. This has a wonderful Wonder Woman type headband that goes with it, and it has sunglasses with the Statue of Liberty on it. There are all sorts of things. It's totally with heavy batting in here and trapuntoed work. The hours that she put into this, putting just those added touches in the decorative trims, and the use of the unusual fabrics, I think, are very exciting.
It has such a puffy look to it.
Doesn't it?
All the batting you make is in this one, right?
That's right. Layered on top
Fairfield's
of
batting
each
is
other.
right in there. Well, it's awesome. It is just an awesome ensemble. It
Isn't
truly
that wonderful?
Wonderful.
And they've all used batting somewhere within the garment so that
Yes.
they can tie in the quilting.
So they get to stay warm as
That's
long as
right.
it's nice.
That's right.
Well, Donna, you've been doing this for, is it 7 years now?
We've had the show for 7 years. This is actually the 8th show since this one came in between the normal seasons that we do it. And we rotate our designers. We have some very well-known designers, as you see here. When we did the show, we combined it, though, with 15 additional garments that were done from our previous Starburst fashion show. And many of those are people just like your audience who are very talented, and we like to show their
Yes.
work in the fashion show.
And we learn from these. We can, just as in
Absolutely.
your vest, you can
Absolutely.
adapt something that is really almost far out, as we would
That's
say,
right.
but then you can adapt it to your own wearability. So,
Well, one of the things that we've tried to do in the fashion show is to really show the ultimate. If we were to show very wearable clothing, it's something that people see all the time. What we do is we create something that's going to inspire them so that they can glean one idea, one color combination, one thought. Certainly, I can't imagine that most of your viewers would be interested in making a coat to duplicate this one. But the ideas, the way she's used the sequins, the variation of patterns and colors together might turn on the light and inspire them to make something that then translates into the type of garment that they feel comfortable wearing. And this is what the whole show is all about, to really give them inspiration and ideas.
make them run home and start sewing right away.
That's
and I
right.
think this did it, and we thank you again.
Well, thank you.
Lap quilting with Georgia Bonesteel is made possible by grants from Family Circle, the world's largest selling women's magazine. Ginger Incorporated, makers of scissors and shears for home and industry. And VIP Fabrics, a division of Cranston Printworks Company, America's oldest textile printer. Georgia Bonesteel is the author of Georgia's New Ideas for Lap Quilting, published by Oxmoor House and available in libraries and bookstores nationwide.